All right, everyone. I want to welcome you guys to our very first How to Create a CEU course presentation given by the ASID Texas Chapter. We've never done this before, and this kind of came about because we just, always get a lot of questions, mostly from industry partners, but sometimes from other practitioners about, how do you create a CU? What truly are the nuts and bolts of the procedure? It's, what are the continuing education requirements for interior designers and members of ASID and others? And I'm not gonna lie, it's very confusing. Um, and it can get a little maddening. And so we thought, well, you know what? Why don't we actually do this presentation, try to answer some questions. Obviously, we are recording this, and what we are going to do is hopefully by this weekend, we will get the video recording as well as this presentation, like a PDF of that uploaded. And so that way you can refer to it later. So don't panic if you don't get everything here. It's okay. And also, if you have questions, if you can kind of hold them to the end, you can put them in the chat and I can kind of read them to Debbie as we go along at the end. Or if, it's not like we have a huge amount of people, I think we could also, if you just want to answer it, ask it in person, we can totally do it that way as well. We are allotting some time to go to about 1:30, but we do have a hard out at 1:30. So just wanted to give you that information. So without further ado, I want to introduce Debbie Fuller. I've known Debbie for years. She is an interior designer. She has presented lots and lots of CEUs for me in the past. And she also is a professor of interior design at Collin College, and their program is just really been amazing. She's done a lot of great things for that program. So, Debbie, I will let you take it away. Thanks.
Okay, great. I'm having to work from a PDF because we were having some technical issues. So, but this presentation is going to be available after probably by this weekend. So it'll kind of helps walk you through the process. And just to let you know, I kind of have two hats. As a professor, my slides are much have a lot more text because this is more of a class as opposed to a CEU presentation. So just know that what I'm showing you is not going to be the ideal CEU format for you to use, but I have some examples for you to go by because this is more of a training exercise. A little bit about me, Laura was saying a little bit that I was in practice for a million years. And very late in my career, I decided I wanted to go back to school, and I went back to North Texas and got an MFA and decided that it was time for me to give back to the, community. I'd had a great career and just felt like I had learned so much. I just wanted to give back. So I left the industry about 5 years ago, and I have been teaching full time now and absolutely love it. I love helping my students find their passion. And so it's about me. So, and I am part of the ASID board, and I'm just the professional development director. I haven't actually, most of the CEUs that I have submitted in the past have been for conferences, which Laura can go through that detail later. It's a little different process than doing it for a manufacturer. So, but my later slides will explain what's involved in that for those of you who are doing it for your company. So continuing education is a term used for any kind of learning that takes place after graduation. And it has become a requirement for many of your industry associations and professional organizations. So Some of your larger firms actually won't even let you go in and talk to their staff unless you have a CEU to offer. But it is a way to get into companies. It is a way to advertise, boost your reputation, become an industry leader in a particular knowledge area. And it's just a great way to promote you as a person, whether you're in sales or manufacturing. But it's something that the purpose of your practice. CEU basically stands for Continuing Education Unit. Often you'll just see the term CE, but with ID+CEC, they usually refer to it as CEU. I went ahead and just thought I would put the continuing education hours that are required by these different organizations for membership. And so you can see that pretty much all your professional memberships related to interior design do require different CEU quantities. And most of the CEUs they require, more so for the state of Texas, is going to be health, safety, and welfare, which I will discuss later. But if you have a topic that is more general, a general category, that is actually that information is actually very desirable to designers. So don't get discouraged if your CEU doesn't meet the health, safety, welfare requirements. ASID automatically accepts CEUs for other partner organizations like AIA, Green Building Certificate Institute or USGBC, IFMA, and NKBA. So, which is nice that they've already partnered with them so you can actually use your, because these are all work with ID+CEC, you can actually create a presentation and then show it to different user types that you may be targeting in the industry. And often the local chapters need CEUs to be presented or speakers at their monthly events. So that's another way to get your name in front of people. So ASID courses as well as university courses, but today we are focusing on the individual, mostly industry partner categories. So ASID automatically accepts education approved by ID+CEC, the state regulatory board approved courses, as well as your local state, which I am not honestly familiar with that category. Laura might be able to go into that in more detail, but I have never seen a state regulatory board approved course. So
I think
Laura,
I think what they must be referring to is sometimes like, for instance, in the Texas Board of Architectural Examiners, which regulates registered interior designers in the state of Texas, as well as landscape architects and architects, they sometimes will offer through their newsletter, oh, if you read this article or if you
okay,
read this particular white paper and answer questions on it, then it will count. So
got
I
it.
think that's what they're talking about. That doesn't happen a lot, but it's minutia. So I will.
Okay, okay. We're not going to go into that then today. So there are three basic types of CEUs you can actually the categories that you can apply for when you are filling out your application. There's the one-time CEU, which actually I'm not sure that's even worth doing unless it's very specific to maybe an industry event or something. The ongoing CEU is really probably the most practical because once it's approved, you can actually use it for 2 years. You can always reapply. They may request a little bit of a refreshing of the product information when they review it again. but ongoing is probably the most flexible as an industry partner. Now, conference CEUs is the third format, and that's actually something that Laura, let's say for any kind of conference or that might be happening within the chapter, she can do those as bulk submittals, and they are sort of approved and handled a little bit differently.
Debbie, I think you're muted. I think I accidentally hit something on.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that for that conference thing, what's nice about the conference offering is that, like, let's say for our Celebrating Design Texas conference that we do, if let's say we would like somebody to do a presentation on a specific subject, but it's not already approved by IDCEC, that's okay. Because what we can do is we can get it approved for a one-time offering as part of the conference. And so that gives us some flexibility to be able to maybe offer some things that we wouldn't normally get to offer as far as topics go. Um, so yeah, I echo Debbie's sentiments is that probably what you guys are going to want to do is if you do go to the trouble to create a CEU, you would want to apply through IDCEC to have it be an ongoing one. So that way you could offer it, multiple times to multiple audiences over a certain period of time.
Yeah. The other thing about the conference offering, I used to present a lot at NeoCon, and one thing that I had learned that I didn't realize at the time was that just because I was able to present it at a larger conference of that sort, it didn't give me I wasn't able to present it at other events without going through a different type of approval. So I couldn't actually use it to submit to, let's say, a local organization and then them get IDCEC credit.
That is
So
true. Because it for the conference, it just gets a one-time number and it is not a number that stays with that CEU. It's just for that one time. And that's only because the rigor to get it approved for a conference is way lower. I mean, it's really, really, there's much less work that you have to go through to get it approved one time for a conference than to get it approved for an ongoing CEU.
yeah. So so submitting a CEU review. An education provider or as an IP, you will need to have either yourself or somebody within your organization be the point of contact, or what they call a CEU administrator. So, and that's basically someone that just handles all the ongoing paperwork or so forth. So, that might be you, that might be somebody else, but just they do want to have that one point of contact. That person or company must have an IDCEC account and must pay the annual registration fee to submit a CEU. We are going to talk about something that ASID is offering, but that's going to be later in the presentation. That is a nice bonus this year that ASID is offering to the industry partners. The review process usually takes about 2 weeks. I have found that sometimes that goes into a little bit longer depending on how busy they are. And also, a CEU approved by AIA or GBCI is not automatically accepted by IDCEC. All of these different organizations have slightly different requirements. So just know that if you want to present to primarily AIA candidates, you might want to go to their website and double check what their requirements are because they're slightly different. Also, all of these links I have provided on the very last page of the presentation, so you can have links to all the different items that are referenced in this PowerPoint. So the CEU calculation, basically 1 hour is 60 minutes, or one CEU is 60 minutes. But if you happen to go over that 65, 70, 75 minutes, they still count that as one CEU. It doesn't become 1.5 CEUs until you hit about 90 minutes. So just know that. PowerPoint presentations vary considerably in terms of how much you're talking, and so that does vary. But the most common CEU is going to be 60 minutes, or one CEU is the most common that you see in the industry. Also, this does not include any kind of breaks, question, anything, travel, and so forth. So just know that's primarily just what's being taught in the presentation. The mandatory requirements, the content has to be generic. It cannot be promoting any sort of product, proprietary product information. You can't be promoting your product logo, anything of that sort. You can put your company logo on the first and last page of the presentation, but you just can't talk about individual proprietary information during the presentation. But that is really doesn't seem to really be too big of an issue. Now, after the presentation is over, you then have the flexibility to actually talk a little bit more of that, or possibly handle that in question and answer. So the requirements of a CEU. It has to have a minimum of 4 learning objectives. It needs to be broken down by topics. For the submission, they're going to want to see your speaker notes, not just your slides. And it's probably the easiest just to send them the actual PowerPoint, and you can include your speaker notes underneath each slide. And they are going to review that, because the purpose of a PowerPoint in general is your slides should not be so text heavy and be more visual, which is exactly what I'm not doing here, because I'm doing this as a training class, so don't use these slides as examples. So you also have to provide a resource page, bibliography, references, they call them several things, and they need to come from reliable sources. You do have to indicate, are you doing it in person, or is it going to be a remote learning document? And that's something that they're going to ask on the sheet that you fill out when you're first submitting it. You need to indicate, is it a basic, intermediate, or advanced course? Honestly, I rarely see advanced courses offered in our industry. Most of them seem to be intermediate. Do you agree with me, Laura?
I would agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basic or intermediate.
Yeah, basic. Now, for the designation of general or health, safety, welfare, we will get into that detail. I believe it's the next slide. But general category is okay. But there is an awful lot of presentations that do qualify for health, safety, and welfare. So, and that is what most designers are going to ask you about, just because that tends to be more the requirement of what they have to submit.
And I will wait. Did you say you're about to, on the next slide, you're going to cover a little bit more about general versus HSW?
I think, yeah, I believe this is the next slide. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I can't see my speaker notes right now. So
I had a couple things I wanted to add. I'll just wait.
Okay. Speaker information. Usually you just include a little bio about who is presenting the topic. They prefer, or the preference is that speaker is from the industry and has some actual knowledge, or is qualified to be teaching the topic that you are presenting. So whether it's yourself or somebody else in your organization, IDCEC does want to know about a little bit of information about who the actual presenter is. There are a couple of mandatory slides that IDCEC would like for you to include in your presentation. I will be showing examples of what those look like. They are on their website, easy to download. Graphics look great, so very practical. And also, if you are going to be providing any kind of handouts, whether it's a copy of the presentation or it's some other handout, you need to include that in your initial submission. So again, there are three levels of submissions: basic, intermediate, and advanced. And you will then decide which one works best for your presentation. HSW requirement. So IDCEC defines a health, safety, welfare designation where is a minimum of 70% of the CEU covers knowledge and practice of interior design that is focused on protection of the public and the environment. These can include, but not limited to, codes, fire and safety systems, sustainability, barrier-free, energy compliance, acoustics, electric, plumbing. So that really does it really does encompass a lot of categories that qualify for HSW. Laura, do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say, and it also could be like ergonomics, anything that would be related to a person's health that you can think of. And of course, barrier free or, designing for people like with universal design or accessibility issues, that's another big topic. And what I have seen is that if you're not sure, maybe that what you're presenting, what it qualifies for, you can always go ahead and maybe submit for HSW, and all they can do is reject that and push it to general. So, and I say that because I have seen some classes that were designated as general, but when you take the class, you realize, wait a minute, this really should have been an HSW. And so I think and I've reached out to those presenters and said, well, what happened with this? And they said, oh, well, I didn't know what to do. I just submitted it as general because I didn't know the difference. And I said, "Oh, no, 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 you should have, submitted as HSW." So if I were you submitting, if you think there might be a chance that you could get approved as HSW, go ahead and submit it that way because all they can do is just reject it, right? You never know till you ask is one of my mottos. Uh, and then there are different kinds of HSW. Debbie, were you going to go over the different kinds of HSW that they have too?
I wasn't going to go into that detail, no. But do you,
Okay, let me run a rote through that really quickly. So there's just a generic HSW, which is totally fine, and that probably would be, having to do with safety systems or maybe acoustics or whatnot. Then you have an HSW SD, which is sustainable design. So that is really focusing on those, energy efficiency, water save, all of that type of thing. Or even like the content, maybe you're talking about content of products that might qualify for LEED or WELL or something of that nature. Then you have something called HSWBC, which is building codes. That's pretty self-explanatory. If you're creating something that really has to do with building code specifically, then I would apply for that. And then the last one is the HSWBF, which is barrier free. And that is the one that is specifically about universal design, ADA requirements, Texas accessibility requirements, anything of that nature should go in that category because part of it is that if you are a registered interior designer in Texas, you are required by the state to have at least one barrier-free class a year. So those are usually the hardest for us to find. Now, granted, a lot of you guys out there who are taking this class, that is not your forte. And so I don't expect you, to like create that kind of thing. But I wanted you to understand what those different designations mean because there's a lot of acronyms going on. And I just wanted you to know the difference between all of those things.
Okay. The next thing that you're going to have to do is obtain what's called a class code. And there is a list of different class codes that you have to submit in your submittal. These are pretty simple. I'm going to show you an example of them in a minute. They are made up of two parts. There's a primary code, which is basically the industry that you're focusing on. And then there are different topics that you would include for the secondary number. And I think this list is much longer. I just went ahead and captioned just the top part of it. It's a partial list. So if you were going to do a presentation on, let's say, interior design, and your category is space planning, that class code would be a 210. So, and I just went ahead and highlighted this on the presentation. The link is below, and there's a whole sheet of individual items that you could actually uh, look at. And I have never heard that the class code is anything that is requested by any kind of agencies. It's just, I think, more for tracking the type of presentation and the category your presentation would fall under.
I think you're right. I have personally, when I've been soliciting CEUs for different
Mhm.
things, have never really focused on that before. I do think it's more of kind of an internal mechanism for
Yeah,
IDCEC themselves to understand what they have in their database.
yeah, yeah. So attendance. This is the one that I think could probably get people in trouble, is that you have to submit your attendance list within 5 days of the event being held. Now, one of what happens is if you don't submit that attendance record, then they will take you off their searchable calendar of events. Not sure how, if that makes a difference for you or not. But again, the goal is to submit within 5 days of the individuals that have actually participated and come to your CEU. They have made attendance much easier, and it's now done online, an online template. You cannot submit it in paper format, and it is not reported. It is not, you can't actually send someone's name via email. But you can actually attach that to their online submittal application. I don't know how it's done for a conference. I don't know if the conference takes care of that or if you as an individual have to take care
For
of
the
that.
conference, it actually is really easy on the presenters because what we do when we do it as a conference, it really puts the onus onto the attendee to report their attendance. So they
Okay,
will do it themselves, and you, as the presenter, won't need to do it.
okay, okay. So there is a naming convention, which I honestly don't know quite how that works. I believe that's something that they provide, but I don't know. Um, I just know that the attendance has to be submitted within 5 days. So here is an example of what the submission planning papers look like. There are 2 pages. You would fill this out online, and then there's a separate one for the conference. This is for the ongoing presentation. So here you can just kind of see what kind of questions they're asking. Pretty simple, pretty basic. So I'm now going to show you how the slides should be organized. There's not really any exact art to this. I just went ahead and have made an example based on other CEUs that I have attended and that have been actually approved. So I'm going to go through slide organization. Now, these are better examples of what yours should look like in terms of font size and so forth. Ignore my previous slides. So on your first slide, it would be your title sheet, your title page. You might give a brief description of what the topic is about. At this point, you can include your company name and logo. Remember, you cannot do this on any of the other slides except for the very last one. So just remember that. You can include the course number, designate is an HSW or general, and then how many learning units. This information could also go on the second slide as well, but this would be for your first slide. Second slide would be providing a small bio about the instructor. And it doesn't have to go into tremendous detail, but again, just so that the audience knows the qualifications of the speaker as well as the IDCEC. The third slide is that states that the IDCEC has approved this particular CEU. You will then provide the class code that is given to you in your presentation. Right here, it's pretty generic. I just want to put CC, 1000000, etc. So just, but this is what they have. They would like something similar to this as a required, just so that it tells the audience who has verified this particular presentation. Here are two additional slides that they provide. I honestly have not seen these two slides in other manufacturers' presentations. I don't know if they are new, but I have not seen them come across when I have taken CEUs. And I did a whole slew of them back last fall for one of my accreditations, and I never saw any of these. So Laura can address
I
this,
bet you're
but
right. I haven't seen that either, so that might be a new slide that they're pushing out to providers.
providers. There is a second one, and I actually thought this had some great information. Everyone seems to be using QR codes, so including a QR code on your presentation would be a great way to help with attendance or possibly tracking individuals for follow-up. But again, this is the secondary slide that they have provided for inclusion into your presentation.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Debbie, because that really, I think it's been within the last 3 years that IDCEC started doing that. So
Mhm.
once you, basically what happens is that they will issue you a QR code for, your presentation that you give at a specific time. So I think
Mhm.
you have to get if you go into the IDCEC portal, you say, hey, I'm giving this CEU on this date at this time in this location. They will give you that QR code, and then you can incorporate that into the very last slide of your presentation. And then those of
Mhm.
us like Debbie and me who are taking your CEU as a practitioner, then if we have the IDCEC app on our phone, which we all should, then we would open it and we would scan that, and it would automatically record our attendance in real time, which also takes the burden off of you to record it for us. So it's really a win-win to try to get as many of our fellow practitioners to do that, because it helps us to, be reassured it's going to be reported, and it helps you to have less work on your behalf. And we also do that for our conference as well. So you don't actually have to provide that QR code for the conference, because we will get that one-time code. But it is kind of a nice thing that has developed in the last few years, as far as just streamlining the process of reporting.
So the next slide, which I have labeled 6, is again a brief description about the CEU and what professionals will learn in this presentation. You might discuss what is covered, the impact of on the profession, just information about what you're presenting and why it's important for people to learn about it. If you have any copyright issues, this is the point. This is a slide where you can actually include that. If you are doing this on behalf of your company or whatever, just to make sure that this information is covered, would be covered near the front of the presentation. The next one is probably the one that's probably going to be, this is where your presentation is actually going to, right after this is where it would start. You're going to do the purpose and learning objectives. This is where you're going to list the 4, and it can be more than 4, but they want a minimum of 4 learning objectives. I went ahead and just did one that pretended like I was teaching a class in interior design space planning. So these are just very simple learning objectives. And then also you're going to need to indicate what the delivery format is. Is it pre-recorded? Is it in person? Is it a conference, etc.? So again, this would be close to the front of your presentations. Then you start your presentation. And basically the bulk of the next quite a few slides will be what you are presenting in your content. And so I did not, every one of these slides will be very custom to your presentation. Whoops, sorry. So you'll continue until the very last slide, which would be your references. So this is where you're going to put your references, your bibliography, or however you want to call them, into your presentation. And this is, most individuals probably don't care about that, but the IDCEC does care about where your information has come from. The end of the presentation, this is the slide. This is where you can say a thank you or include thank you on a separate one. I don't know, again, depending on how you present it, you might then want to ask for questions, but it's on that very last slide that you can actually include your company name or logo. After this point, you can then start talking about that's important. And then the bulk of the presentation. I am going to do some quick guidelines on acceptable presentation techniques, because this is where, you know, what I see is that the techniques that what you're teaching for like a university class is very different than what you're teaching to as a CEU. And so as a CEU, it's going to be very image heavy with little text, and then you're going to be talking. That's where you're going to be using those speaker notes. And those speaker notes aren't necessarily something that you're going to have to actually include in the handouts that you give your participants. Font is very important. It needs to be a font that is sans serif, that is very simple to read. Helvetica, Arial, Calibri, Franklin Gothic is another one, but the font just needs to be very simple and easy to read and consistent. Be very consistent with the font size, the case, because these are things that are going to help make your presentation look better. If possible, limit your fonts to 2 styles. Readability. These sound huge, but in a presentation, the title of this sheet actually is, or the title of this slide is 40 point, but the text is actually 30 point. And those are just some good rules of thumb. Now, but if you have to go down to 24 on your listing, then that's acceptable too. But the primarily fonts need to be fairly large. And again, I don't have a lot of images in this presentation, but if you have images, those will always capture your audience more so than text and capture their attention. Visual appeal and comprehension, having high contrast color, whether you have a colored slide with white text or a light color with black text, just have high contrast, which is actually visually easier to see when you're in a big room. Remember to look at colors because they can evoke emotions. I know there's some issues with cultural colors, but I find that most people tend to use colors that are more related to their logos in their actual presentation. So try to limit your color to 2 to 3 colors maximum. simple backgrounds, and then again, like I said, more images if possible. Pictures can communicate complex ideas. Your pictures or images should be about 20 to 25% of the page. These were sort of like eye candy, and they do grab the attention of the viewer much more. So do not clutter your slides with lots of junk. Try to keep them as clean and simple as possible. This is the common pitfall, is that people overcrowd their slides, and nothing is worse than being in a room trying to read tiny fonts or that are just of text. I would rather them just say, go to this page and you can access, this intricate details. Try to use bullets in lieu of sentences, and this was not my quote, but I thought it was great. Think Apple Store, not Swap Meet. So they do a great job of merchandising their product. Remove barriers. So make sure that the slides are grab the audience's attention, and you only need to grab their attention for the first 30 seconds and talk about the slide. It's very common to have one slide up and someone talks about it for several minutes. So yeah, a really good presentation are not heavy in text. So here are some of the reasons for denial. I'm also going to talk about tips, and then the cost of what it the fees that are associated with submitting a CEU. The most common reason a CEU is denied is because the insufficient information is included. Make sure you include the PowerPoint with speaking notes in your submission, and also any handouts. If the PowerPoint is not complete, I know that they will, with conference submissions, they are much more flexible, but for a where you do when you do the second category of ongoing, they are going to want to see a lot more detail. Make sure there's no proprietary information, which I think I stressed that earlier. And you should be okay. And then also, again, restrict your name and your logo to the first and last slides. And then also make sure you include those references, because they will look at those to make sure that the information is included. Now, one thing I did not mention, and part of this is because I have been told, and I know that several people have mentioned the use of AI in creating these presentations. Honestly, I try to investigate that. AI scares me to death. When you are in education, AI is not your friend. It is something that can lead to plagiarism. It is becoming very serious in higher education. But from the standpoint of a manufacturer and trying to create a CEU, I understand there are ways to create very handsome presentations using that technique. I just am not familiar with that. So I'm being honest with you. I am very more traditional and don't have an expertise in that, but I would love to know if someone is having success with that, because I would like to investigate it, but I kept running into dead ends when I was looking into that category. So tips. Keep your slides simple, limit the number of words on your slide, use high quality photos and graphics, choose your appropriate fonts, and the font that you use doesn't need to be the font you use in your logo. So keep that logo special. It's more of a piece of art. Choose your colors well. Whether it's PowerPoint or Canva, they have a lot of pre-made templates, and those actually can be very interesting visually. They do tend to get a little bit busy at sometimes, so but you may feel more comfortable using templates as opposed to creating them from scratch. Avoid over formatting your points. Clean and simple formatting makes all the difference. Make sure all your objects are aligned. Limit punctuation. Also, be careful about your acronyms. We have so many acronyms in our industry. If you include an acronym in parentheses, explain what that acronym is. Just because it's getting to where we are living in a world of acronyms and the general public doesn't always know what you're talking about. So combine information with graphics in a PowerPoint. Canva is another piece of software that is free to use. I actually love Canva. It has great graphic options. It doesn't, there are things it doesn't allow you to do, but generally it is very user-friendly software. You do, if you want to use their background remover for some of your images, you do have to sign up for their Pro, which I want to say it's like 119 a year. So it's really worth it. There are some free background remover softwares out there that can actually remove the background from an image. And really your images look better when they don't have fuzzy backgrounds around them. So, and most of us do use the internet to find images. So just think about that when you're looking at to prepare the actual presentation. Display the QR code, which actually is I think that's a great tool that IDCEC is encouraging. And I think most of the younger generation, everything has a QR code in now there. So they're used to using that QR code. It's some of us that are older that have a hard time figuring out how to access that code. I'm being one of them. So remember, just sort of a general rule of thumb, when you are doing a presentation and you're trying to figure out how many slides you need to create, usually it's one slide per minute. So if you have an hour presentation, you might have either between 45 and 50 slides, and then you're talking during that. But you don't have to have a presentation that's that big if you're going to do more talking. So you're going to need to, probably the way to do this is maybe to rehearse it, practice in front of a friend or a family member the first time around, just to make sure you have enough slides. So it works pretty well. So here are the fees that came out at the end of the year. So this is for the this year, 2025. So most of the time, again, if you work for a company, they will be actually paying for the corporate membership. If you are an individual, you would have to pay a lot less, 180 a year. And then just know that you have a membership fee and you also have a course submission fee. So those are two fees that you'll have to deal with. Ongoing offerings are going to be 400 per course, whereas single offerings are 300 per course. But also that single offering, you can only use it one time. And if you are presenting on if let's say, if this particular presentation, we did not submit it for IDCEC, but if we did, we would submit it through ASID and we would have to pay $220 to get this submitted as a CEU, which we did not, but just know that that's how those fees work. Now, the good news is, and I'm going to let Laura explain this one, because this is kind of a neat bonus. So,
Yeah, so this was something new that ASID headquarters is offering, and I only saw it they sent us some kind of sheets that explained IP benefits for this year. And the new thing on the list was this first year of corporate IDCEC provider fees for CEU accreditation is waived. Now it says $400 value on that, and I think that's because when they created these, um, that was last year, and that's probably what the fee was that IDCEC told them. And so apparently IDCC has upped that $40 to $440 as opposed to $400. I am assuming, again, I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming that ASID is going to up their waiver to the $440 as well. Um, just because, ASID is a member of IDCEC, but don't quote me on that. That may be, something you might have to contact ASID headquarters directly about and just clarify. But it would make sense to me that that's the way they would do it. So that's kind of a nice little perk for being an official ASID industry partner member these days. So I would just inquire. We can't, as individuals, can't really inquire for you. You would have to contact ASID directly. Either log into your asid.org account, or there's a phone number at the very bottom of the asid.org website, and you could call somebody and ask those questions. Um, Debbie, did you have any other things, or are you ready to take some?
Oh, let's say, the last one is questions.
Okay,
Yeah. Do you
very
have any
good.
questions?
I'm going to go over. I had a couple of people asking me questions directly that I'm going to just
Okay.
kind of go over and share. One of them is, will this be recorded and sent to us? And yes, we are recording this currently. And my goal is over the weekend to get this up and linked on our ASID website, as well as the PDF that Debbie has just presented us. And then what I can do is I can send out an email through Eventbrite to everybody who registered for this, and you guys will have access to it there. So that is my goal there. Um, let's see. Okay, and then Channing asked, so if you have presentations that are AIA approved, do you not need to submit it with IDCEC because ASID accepts AIA approved courses? This is where it gets so confusing. So, if it is AIA approved, ASID members would, and it's not IDCEC approved, basically, I would have, if I took that course, I would have to log into my IDCEC portal account and I would have to self-report that. The benefit of going ahead and getting a course that's already AIA approved to be IDCEC approved as well is that I, as the attendee, would just be able to either scan that QR code through my app that I have, or have you, as the presenter, record it for me. So that way, it's just a little bit of a nicer, easier thing on the behalf of the CEU taker, if that makes any sense at all. But that's where it gets confusing. So I would always, if you think your audience for your CEU is really going to be a lot of interior designers who are, whether they're ASID, IDA members or not, I would go ahead and go to the trouble to get your class IDCEC approved. It really is only going to make things easier for everybody. And it will kind of make the attendee like myself maybe a little bit more willing to take the CEU because I know that it is IDCEC approved and it'll count for my requirements. Um,
Thanks. That makes sense.
okay, great. I know it's so confusing. Okay, and Michael said, can the CEU be presented in person and remote? Because Debbie, you were talking about you have to choose,
Mhm.
whether you're going to do it in person or remote. I would say if you know for sure that you're only ever going to offer this remotely, let's say through some sort of portal for your company, then you could say it's going to be online. If you think that the majority of the times that you want to offer this CEU is going to be in person, then I would just say it's going to be in person. That doesn't mean that at some point you can't offer it online. You could, but I would just go with the majority. If 75% you're going to do it, in person, then you just choose that as the option. Um,
Laura, if you do submit, if you do an online presentation, I know that whenever I've taken an online presentation, you have to usually do a quiz, um, after that, particular presentation to get credit. I don't know who actually monitors that quiz.
I've only
That's
seen
why,
that with recorded things. If it is a live,
yes, pre-recorded, yes.
yeah, if it's a live presentation, I've never had to take a quiz before.
No, if it's live, I've never had to either, just the more on demand.
Right,
So,
right. Exactly.
and I don't know who actually administers the quiz and who does the grading. I
I
don't know
think
how that
I
function
think those
works.
recorded on demand ones have to be through a portal like somebody
AEC.
who does, like, for example, I'm a well AP accredited professional, so I have to have a ridiculous amount of CEUs every 2 years. And so I usually use like there's an online portal that I use, and they monitor all of that stuff. But
Okay,
it's all
okay,
on demand stuff. And I know
okay.
that, like AEC Daily, I think they have some of
Mhm.
those things too. So I don't think you probably, as providers, the people who are taking this class right now, probably need to worry about that. That's usually only when you're from this giant company that has a big marketing department that they're kind of developing those, and you as an individual probably don't have to worry about that. Um, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that up,
I would
Debbie.
imagine most of you are more concerned about delivering on in-person presentations so that you can actually meet potential clients and users to develop your marketing base and to
Exactly.
develop those clientele. So most of these I think would be in person.
And
So
Michael had a really good question. He said, "Do they tell you why, specifically why your CEU might get rejected? Do they actually give you a reason, Debbie?"
yes,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
they'll tell you where you need to fix it. But those are when I was researching it, those seem to be the most common reasons. But also, I think another common issue is not including references or your it's again bibliography, references, resources, whatever. When you don't include that information, they immediately might reject it for something very simple. But
Excellent.
they
I'm
tell
glad.
you they will tell you why things are not why it's rejected.
Good.
So,
I wasn't
I
sure.
I submitted one of our AIA courses a few weeks ago, and it was a really just easy, good process. I actually included like the presentation and some references and stuff. And I mean, it only took like maybe 2 days, and they were very communicative
wow.
about it. They were like, "We've got it, we're working on it." So it was a really good process, in my
Oh,
opinion.
good. That's
Oh,
great
that's
to
great.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing
I,
that.
I think that a lot of us see this IDCEC and we see the review process. So we're kind of thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to be so stringent and restrictive. I have seen some go through that I didn't think would pass and that I didn't think they would meet the health, safety, welfare category. They went through like a breeze.
Hmm,
So this
Hmm.
is not a hard process and it's not as intimidating as what you might think it is. So
good. Somebody asked, it was Kyle. Kyle Kluth said, "Can you resubmit for HSW if you already have a general designation for it and get the HSW later?" I didn't totally know the answer, but my advice wasn't, Debbie, tell me if you know something different. I said, with my motto of you never know till you ask, if you if you contacted IDCC directly and explained the situation, basically said, "Hey, I had, we submitted and we asked for a general designation because I didn't really understand what HSW truly meant. But is there a way that, I think this might qualify as HSW? Can you look at it again?" It can't hurt to ask and
mhm.
see if they will redo it. I mean, all they can say is no, right? They might do it. They might do it. The other thing would be is at the end of the expiration period for that specific CEU and you want to resubmit, I think during that process, you could say, hey, we've actually, maybe even beefed up the HSW content. We'd like to resubmit, but we want to resubmit for the HSW designation, not the general designation. So that would
I
be
think
my
the other thing is, I think Laura, when you mentioned, if you don't know, it might be easier just to submit as an HSW. All they have to do is say no. The other thing is I will update the presentation before you guys get a copy of it with a more detailed process of what actually is covered in HSW so that you'll have more understanding of what actually that means.
great.
So I will again make some additions before this is posted.
Perfect. Another question was, will will the system generate a certificate that can be handed out to attendees? Now, I only know from the attendee standpoint because I've never been a provider like Debbie, so I'm going to answer from the attendee standpoint, and then Debbie, if you had anything to add from a provider standpoint, I'll let you take that. So I know that let's say I take a CEU from one of you guys, and if I use the QR code thing at the end, then it will, automatically report my attendance. But let's say I didn't use the QR code and you as a provider reported attendance for me. So then I can log in to my IDCEC account. I can see my dashboard to see all the CEUs that I've taken, in the last year or whatever. And if I want a certificate for myself just to say download and have in a file just for my peace of mind, I can just through my IDCEC account click on that and I can download a certificate for myself that has, your provider information on it and when I took it and all that kind of stuff. Debbie, can you do that on the provider side if somebody
You
contacts
know, I have actually, honestly, I don't know if that is something automatic with IDCEC or if it's something in the past. I have had to actually create the certificate
you? Okay.
and for all the individuals. I'm going to need to ask that question because I don't know. But I will try to get that question answered before we upload the final so that you guys have that. Because I don't honestly know the answer.
Okay, good deal. Let me see. Okay, Shannon says, so do you have to pay $11 for the class code every time you present?
From what I understand, yes.
Oh, okay.
The
Thanks.
other thing is, other question I was trying to get clarified, but I have been waiting on a phone call. They don't seem to operate or answer their phones very often, just FYI. I understand it's easier to email them, which I have not done that yet, but as a provider, um, there is a fee associated with each time somebody, when you have uh, to get the IDCEC approval or I guess cost, and I don't know how that works on the provider side. If that's the $11 fee, I know that that usually becomes part of the sales, the IP or providers responsibility. And I don't know, I thought it was $15, but then I saw $11. I need to get that clarified. It's very confusing. But there
Yeah,
is
that
a
seems
fee
like it
associated.
could add up quickly.
And that's what I'm going to declare because there's we haven't heard
Okay,
Hey,
thank
Debbie,
you.
this is Amy Mintz. Can you repeat that? It didn't work on my end.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I can't hear. I'm not sure who's trying to talk, but yeah, I could not hear that either. So,
It's Debbie. It's just not coming through very well.
oh,
Sounds good saying working to listening represents and represents those areas of the designers.
yeah, Debbie, for some reason your audio is garbled. I'm not really sure why, but you know what, Debbie, why don't you turn off your video? Can you turn off your video? It may be your internet connection that's and maybe stop sharing your screen. All right, maybe try to talk again and see if that helps. No, unfortunately. I think something's going on with your internet connection, sadly, but um okay, let me go back real quick. So, Victoria, okay, Victoria, you said on the topic of CEU approval in jurisdictions, other states work differently than Texas. For example, Louisiana has very specific interior design CEUs, not necessarily via IDCEC. So not all AIA, IFMA, lead well, etc. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit, Victoria?
Yes. So in Louisiana, they have a set list of approved CEUs for interior designers.
Oh, interesting.
And if you, for example, I may take 30 CEUs in the year, but only specific ones count. They also only require five CEUs to stay current per
Hmm,
year. But most of theirs show up on the AEC. They do not show up on the IDCEC. So each state is different. I understand Florida is similar. Nebraska is going to be very similar. And then other states have said they have different than how Texas works. We all live in Texas, so I think abiding by the Texas jurisdiction is good. But if you are a manufacturer that is developing a CEU that's IDCEC approved, you also might want to check if you're offering that in other locales to make sure that the specific jurisdiction you're presenting in will accept it and give credit.
sure.
So having said that, some of the AIA CEUs that I've taken do not count towards Louisiana CEU requirements. Not that it's bad to take them, but that's
Right.
my 2 cents worth.
So that's a good point that you're making. So sometimes there are different reasons that us design practitioners need to take CEUs. So if we are registered interior designers, we do have those requirements for the state of Texas. But then ASID as well as IDA, they have their own membership requirements. So those two are a bit different to where, the ones that we have to take for the state of Texas have to all be HSW, where the ones that we take for ASID or IDA do not. They could be general. So it just kind of depends on, why you just take CEUs for different reasons, which again is very confusing. And so I am actually putting into the group chat right this minute a link to a page that is on our ASID Texas chapter website that we have put up there to help you guys as well as our designer members understand kind of the all the acronyms, why do people take CEUs? Who are the approval bodies? Who aren't the approval bodies? Et cetera, et cetera. And that's just stays there. And I do update it if new information becomes available. And so that is always a good place to check to see if you have some questions about what does this mean? Where do I go? That kind of thing. I'm also gonna try to answer, Victoria, your question. You said on the conference approval, can we submit to ASID a packet of 3 presentations for a one-time approval for a single fee, or will we be charged 3 individual CEU charges? Well, what happens with the conference? So I'm the one that submits our Celebrating Design Texas Conference CEUs for approval to IDCEC through our ASID Texas account. The deal with that is that the minimum fee just to submit a conference is, I think it used to be $500. I think it's $550 now. So it makes sense to do it that way if you are submitting a bunch of CEUs. If you're just submitting three, I guess it still would be cheaper than just doing a one-off. But it's not cheap, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If if you're trying to submit business of design, we can talk about that. We'd probably need to move pretty fast on that if that's something that we want to do. But I was thinking that some of your stuff was already approved, and so you didn't need to do that. But let's talk about that. Maybe I can talk to you about that this weekend or on Monday directly. Let's see. Debbie, why don't you unmute yourself real quick and see if you're back? Are you saying anything?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, for whatever reason, you're still mute. I mean, you're still garbled. I'm not sure what's going on there. Technology is great when it works. Um, okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys. I think we're done with questions, and I hope this was helpful. And like I said, we'll get this up, and I will, contact people through Eventbrite to let you know when all the links are ready to go. And again, thanks for doing this with us. This was the first time we've ever tried this, and I hope it was helpful. I know it's confusing, but we just want to help you guys, get in front of our members and foster some good business relationships and educate our members. So thank you so much, and we'll see you later. Bye.